The joke this week is the idea we can't tell the Caucasus from Prague and the Czech Republic, but it's not funny. This is a serious job that you've been doing for decades. How do we trust the intelligence we receive, not only from our sources in the Caucasus or wherever we go in terrorism, or for that matter, from the Russians as well?
Well, that's a great point, because one of the main questions right now, I'm sure will be answered within the next few days, are when the Russians, if still, I don't know if it's been released officially, if the Russian FSB, the rough equivalent of the FBI, made that request to the FBI about a check for the older brother here, what kind of information was coming from the Russians, and was it compelling?
When you see the information coming, how is it done? What is the actual process as we gain information on the few people in the country who maybe we should focus on more?
Well, in a situation like this, I mean, last week when we heard the news about a Chechnya connection, it was counterintuitive because there was nothing like this heretofore in the Western Hemisphere. So really, it remains a matter of all the indices, checks, databases, U.S. intelligence resources, law enforcement working with allies. That continues.
As we try to search for a motive here, and you make the Chechnyan link, talk about the history of this place, its oppressive sort of nature, and how it became a bit of a breeding ground for terrorist activity.
Well, in my experience in working USS Cole 9/11 and before that in the 1990s, we knew of many Chechen sojourners coming to jihad fronts like Bosnia, Afghanistan, typically receiving training, then going home to Chechnya, doing opposition activity there, and then terrorism events in Russia. So in other words, it was hyper-local. They're out there, but typically
you would
not
never
a threat
imagine
to
it
us.
to the United States.
Exactly.
Well, My Morning West Street has to do with all of this. Semantics matter, according to the former Deputy National Security Advisor under George W. Bush. Juan Zarate wrote in the Washington Post that when the Obama administration came into office, it constrained the language of the counterterrorism campaign from a war on terror to war on al-Qaeda. Remember, the president was very reluctant to call this a terrorist activity here. It ignored the reality that the threat was metastasizing. Viewing the threat through this solely al-Qaeda lens has certainly limited the White House, hasn't it?
Well,
when it comes to these kinds of events.
Right. With due respect, though, I tend to agree with that, agree in principle that it is a war against the philosophy of al-Qaeda or al-Qaeda-ism. Because although the remnants of al-Qaeda under bin Laden may not be the same operationally, that very toxic mix of that philosophy is out there.
You have international renown for looking at Wahhabi in Saudi Arabia, the different flavors, to borrow from Howard Johnson's The 28 Flavors of Islam. Color for us the nature of Islam in the Caucasus. In my reading this weekend, that this is less about Islam and more about an anti-Russian projection.
I agree with that completely. In fact, demographically...
I can take the rest of the week off now.
You've got it.
We all... demographically, traditionally, is a more mainstream form of Islam, although by percentage, though, there is a smaller, the Salafi Takfiri, a strain of that kind of violent Islam, but overwhelmingly a nationalist local issue.
Well, when it comes to terrorist activities, what is the difference between training and radicalization, and is that an important distinction?
Yeah, it is. It depends on the context. Again, typically go to places where they can train with immunity, get that experience. And the Chechen fighters traditionally in a place like Afghanistan and Iraq, small numbers in Syria, they're welcomed by the so-called brothers because they have a fierce fighting tradition.
We tried this weekend to find the icons to move us forward. Neil Diamond flying in and singing at Fenway Park, Sweet Caroline, and other emotional moments. Forget about it. Guys like you still have to go to work. What is the to-do list for the FBI this Monday and through the week?
An intensive investigation continues very, very intensively. Priorities, other plots underway, co-conspirators in the United States. Was there training, tasking, and a dispatch of this young man, or might there be coming more? And then the thing right now, resiliency.